The auction hall on Vendrick's 7 station was nothing like Kate Miller had imagined. The air was thick and heavy, filled with the sharp smell of ozone mixed with something wild and musky. It reminded her of the zoo back home, but stranger. More dangerous. She could hear the hum of energy fields, the chittering of alien languages through translation devices, and the occasional roar or screech from the creatures being displayed. Kate had been hauling freight across the outer colonies for 3 years now, and she thought she'd seen it all. But this place? This was something else entirely. She shouldn't even be here. 5 minutes ago, she'd been looking for a guy named Tommy Chin who supposedly sold cheap fusion coils. She'd followed the directions on her datapad, taken what she thought was a shortcut through the station's commercial sector, and somehow ended up at the back entrance of the most exclusive exotic animal auction in this part of the galaxy. Now she stood against the back wall, trying not to draw attention to herself while dozens of wealthy aliens crowded around transparent containment fields. They weren't just looking. They were showing off. Each creature was more impressive than the last. There were 6-legged hunting cats with crystalline fur that refracted light into rainbows. Flying serpents with wings that shimmered like liquid mercury. Predators that looked like they'd been pulled from nightmares, all teeth and claws and sleek, deadly beauty. Credits were changing hands faster than Kate could track. Millions for a single creature. She watched a tall, thin alien with purple skin casually drop 8 million credits on something that looked like a cross between a tiger and a lightning bolt. The crowd applauded politely. Kate shook her head. Her entire ship was worth maybe 200,000 credits on a good day. These people spent more on pets than she'd earn in a lifetime. She was about to leave when the atmosphere in the room changed. The large cargo doors at the front of the hall groaned open wider than they had for any previous lot. The crowd went quiet. Not the good kind of quiet like anticipation. This was the uncomfortable silence people make when they're watching something they don't want to see but can't look away from. Then the dragon entered. Kate had seen pictures of void dragons in the freight database. They were supposed to be magnificent. Terrifying, yes, but in the way that made you respect them. This dragon was terrifying in a completely different way. The creature barely squeezed through the entrance, even with the doors at maximum width. It must have been 20 feet tall at the shoulder, maybe more. But there was no majesty in the way it moved. Each step looked painful, like the dragon was carrying a weight it could barely manage. Its scales were a dull, patchy gray-brown, the color of old metal left out in the rain. Scars covered every visible inch of its body. Some were old and faded, others looked newer, angrier. Its left wing was completely gone, just a stump joint where it should have been. The right wing dragged on the ground behind it, torn and useless. The dragon's head hung low. Its eyes swept across the auction hall slowly, taking in the crowd of well-dressed aliens who were already whispering to each other, making faces, turning away in disgust. Kate felt something twist in her chest. She knew that look. She'd seen it before back on Earth at the animal shelter where she'd volunteered as a teenager. The old dogs that nobody wanted. The ones who'd been through too much, hurt too many times. They'd get that same expression in their eyes. Not angry. Not even sad anymore. Just empty. Like they'd given up on the world ever being kind to them again. The auctioneer, a short reptilian creature with bright orange scales, activated his translator and began speaking. His voice came through in flat, emotionless English. Lot 847. Carthax. Void Dragon, age estimated at 400 standard years. Classified as deadliest tier for previous aggressive incidents. Reserve temperament issues. Starting bid 50,000 credits. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Kate watched the dragon's eyes. They were golden, she realized. Beneath the exhaustion and pain, they still held that deep, burning gold color. And they were smart. Whatever else this creature was, it wasn't stupid. It knew exactly where it was and what was happening. The auctioneer's translator crackled again, this time with a hint of impatience. 40,000 credits? Surely someone sees value here. A rippling, translucent alien near the front made a sound like wind chimes tinkling. Its translator converted the laugh into words. That hideous thing? I wouldn't keep it in my waste disposal facility. It's an embarrassment to its species. Other aliens joined in the laughter. Kate felt her hands forming fists at her sides. 20,000 credits then, the auctioneer said quickly. Final offer before we proceed to disposal protocols. Disposal protocols. They were going to kill it. Because it was old. Because it was hurt. Because it wasn't pretty enough to show off to their rich friends. Kate's mouth opened before her brain caught up with what she was doing. How much does it eat? She heard herself ask. The question cut through the murmuring crowd like a knife. Dozens of alien heads turned toward the back of the hall. Toward the human in the worn flight jacket and scuffed boots who clearly didn't belong in a place like this. The auctioneer's 3 eyes blinked in sequence, clearly confused. Excuse me? Kate stepped forward, her heart hammering in her chest. I asked how much it cost to feed the dragon. Per month. How much? The persistence was Kate's home, her livelihood, and her pride all rolled into one beat-up freight hauler. She'd bought it with every credit she'd saved from 5 years of working double shifts on colony stations. The ship wasn't pretty, but it was hers. And right now, it was definitely not designed to carry a massive, traumatized dragon. Kate stood in what used to be her main cargo bay and tried not to panic. She'd cleared out everything she could, stacking supply crates in the corridors and shoving equipment into every spare corner. Even with all that work, Carthax barely fit. The dragon was hunched in the far corner, his massive body taking up at least 3/4 of the available space. His one remaining wing was pressed tight against his scarred side, and his head hung low, like he was trying to make himself smaller. Trying to disappear. Those golden eyes tracked Kate's every movement. Not with aggression exactly. More like calculation. Like he was constantly measuring the distance between them, planning his response to whatever pain she might inflict. It made Kate's heart ache. She grabbed a couple of emergency ration packs from her dwindling supply and sat down cross-legged on the floor, right outside the cargo bay entrance. The door stood wide open between them. She'd made sure of that. Carthax could leave the bay anytime he wanted. Not that there was anywhere to go on a ship traveling through the emptiness of deep space, but still. The choice mattered. Freedom, even the illusion of it, mattered. All right, big guy, Kate said, keeping her voice calm and steady. She'd learned a long time ago that tone mattered more than words when dealing with scared animals. Here's our situation. I've got enough food for both of us to last about 3 weeks if we're careful. Station Alpha 9 is roughly 2 weeks away, assuming we don't hit any problems. So we're going to be okay. We just need to be smart about this. Carthax didn't respond. Didn't move. Just watched her with those ancient, wary eyes. Then his stomach growled. The sound was deep and rumbling like distant thunder. It echoed through the cargo bay and made the metal floor vibrate slightly under Kate's legs. The dragon's eyes flickered with what might have been shame. Kate pretended not to notice. She pulled out one of the protein bar packages and slid it across the smooth floor. It skidded to a stop about halfway between them, still closer to Kate than to the dragon. It's not exactly gourmet food, she said, watching Carthax stare at the package like it might explode. Actually, it tastes like cardboard mixed with vitamins and sadness. But it's food. Real food. And it's yours. Nobody's going to take it away from you. The dragon didn't move. His eyes went from the food to Kate's face and back again. She could almost see the thoughts running through his head. The doubt. The fear. How many times had someone offered him kindness only to snatch it away at the last second? How many times had food been used as a weapon, a tool for control and punishment? Kate reached for her own protein bar and made a big show of unwrapping it. The packaging crinkled loudly in the quiet of the ship. Look, see? Same stuff. I'm eating it right now. We're in this together, you and me. She took a bite and immediately regretted every life choice that had led to this moment. The bar tasted exactly like she'd described. Cardboard, vitamins, and profound disappointment. She chewed slowly, trying not to make a face and failing completely. Okay, it's actually worse than I remembered, she admitted, forcing herself to swallow. But it'll keep us alive, and that's what counts. She kept eating. Kept sitting there, relaxed and unthreatening, just a human having a terrible meal on the floor of her own ship. 5 minutes passed. Then 10. Kate was halfway through her second bar when Carthax finally moved. It happened fast. One moment the dragon was frozen in place, the next he'd surged forward in a blur of scarred scales and desperate hunger. His jaws snapped up the protein bar package in a single motion. Then he retreated just as quickly, pressing himself back into the corner, his whole body tensed and ready for retaliation. For punishment. For pain. Kate didn't flinch. Didn't move toward him. Didn't raise her voice or make any sudden gestures. She just smiled, warm and genuine, and took another bite of her own terrible meal. There you go, she said softly. Good dragon. There'll be more tomorrow. And the day after that. And every day until we reach the station. I promise. Carthax watched her for a long moment, the protein bars already gone. Kate could see him processing what had just happened. Food offered. Food taken. No punishment. No tricks. Just kindness. The dragon's golden eyes were still suspicious. Still wary. But maybe, just maybe, there was the tiniest flicker of something else there too. something that looked almost like hope. Kate had started to relax. That was her first mistake. 2 days. They'd been flying for 2 days without incident, and she'd actually begun to think they might make it to Haven's Edge without any problems. The ship's systems were running smoothly. Carthax had started eating regularly, even letting Kate sit closer during mealtimes. Things were looking up. She was running her final system checks before the last jump when the proximity alarm shattered the quiet. The sound was sharp and urgent, the kind of alarm that made your stomach drop and your hands start shaking before your brain even processed what was happening. Kate's eyes snapped to the scanner display. 3 contacts. Coming in fast. They'd dropped out of hyperspace in a perfect intercept formation, the kind of maneuver that took practice and coordination. Pirates. Her blood turned to ice when she read the ship's signatures. Krillian Raiders. She'd heard stories about them in every spacer bar from here to the core worlds. They were 4-armed crustacean warriors who treated violence like an art form. Their ships were fast, their weapons were devastating, and they had exactly 2 modes: efficient robbery or efficient murder. There was no in-between. The communication system crackled to life. The voice that came through was rough and grinding like gravel being crushed. The translation software turned it into flat, emotionless English. Freighter persistence. Cut your engines immediately and prepare for boarding. Any resistance will result in hull breach and immediate death. You have 30 seconds to comply. Kate's hand moved toward the emergency distress beacon, then froze halfway there. She pulled up the navigation display with trembling fingers. They were 2 days out from Haven's Edge in the dead zone between patrol routes. Even if she sent a distress signal right now, the nearest security vessel was at least 6 hours away. She and Carthax would be long dead by then. She heard movement from the cargo bay. Carthax had raised his massive head, suddenly alert. Those golden eyes were fixed on her, reading her body language, her fear. The dragon might not understand human technology, but he understood danger. Kate took a deep breath and tried to think. She had maybe a minute before they docked. No weapons. No backup. No options except surrender and hope they just took her stuff and left. She stood up from the pilot's chair and walked back to the cargo bay entrance. Carthax watched her approach, his whole body tense. "Stay back," Kate told him, trying to keep her voice steady. "They're raiders. Pirates. They want cargo, maybe some credits. We give them what they want and they'll leave. Nobody has to get hurt. Just stay here and stay quiet, okay?" Carthax's eyes narrowed. In the past 2 days, Kate had learned to read some of his expressions. This one was clear. He didn't believe her. Humans, the dragon had learned, were terrible liars. The boarding tube connected with a metallic clang that echoed through the entire ship. Kate felt it through the floor, felt the vibration as the airlock engaged. Her heart was hammering so hard she could hear it in her ears. The inner airlock door hissed open. 6 Krillian raiders poured through like a wave of armored death. They were bigger than Kate had imagined, each one easily 7 feet tall. Their natural armor was thick and ridged, colored in mottled browns and greens. 4 arms apiece, and every one of them held a weapon. Plasma rifles that glowed with barely contained energy. Kate knew what those weapons could do. She'd seen the aftermath once on a salvage job. The rifles could punch through ship hulls like tissue paper. The leader pushed to the front. He was bigger than the others, with a wicked scar running across his shell from one side to the other. His mandibles clicked together in what might have been amusement. "Human," he said, his translator turning the clicks and grinding sounds into words. "Alone. This will be quick." Kate raised her hands slowly, keeping them visible. She'd positioned herself in the corridor, directly in front of the cargo bay entrance. Not blocking it exactly. She wasn't stupid enough to think she could physically stop these creatures. But she was there. A presence. A reminder. "Take what you want," she said, proud that her voice only shook a little. "I don't want any trouble. Just take the cargo and go." The leader's compound eyes glittered. He gestured with 2 of his arms, and his crew began moving through the ship, checking compartments and grabbing anything valuable. "Move aside, human," the leader said. "We're taking everything, including that dragon we picked up on our scanners. Do you know what void dragon parts sell for on the black market? Scales, claws, organs. We'll make more from that creature than from 10 freighters like this one." Kate felt something cold settle in her chest. Not fear anymore. Something harder. Something that felt a lot like rage. "No," she said. The word hung in the recycled air like a challenge. The raider leader tilted his head, mandibles clicking in confusion. "What did you say?" "I said no." Kate's voice was steady now. "Rock solid. You can have the cargo. All of it. You can have every credit I've got in my account. But you're not touching my dragon. The raiders laughed. It was a horrible sound like rocks grinding together in a crusher. The leader's mandibles spread wide in what passed for a grin among his species. Stupid human. Your species' sentimentality is a weakness. It makes you soft. It makes you easy to kill. He raised his plasma rifle, the weapon humming with power as it charged. The barrel pointed directly at Kate's chest. Move aside or I'll remove you. Your choice. Kate didn't move. Couldn't move. Every instinct screamed at her to run, to dive out of the way to save herself. But her feet stayed planted. Behind her, she heard the cargo bay door begin to open. Last chance, human, the raider leader said. Then Carthax exploded into the corridor. News in the galactic community spread like wildfire, especially when it involved humans doing something unexpected. And a human freight hauler driving off 6 Krillian raiders with the help of an old, scarred dragon? That was the kind of story that got passed around every station bar, every trading post, every communication network from the outer colonies to the core worlds. Kate heard about it before she even docked at Haven's Edge. Her comm system kept pinging with incoming messages. Other freight haulers wanting to know if the story was true. Reporters asking for interviews. Even a few military officers wanting details about Krillian raider tactics. Most of the galaxy found it hilarious. Just another example of humans and their weird pack-bonding instincts. Leave it to a human to adopt a creature everyone else had thrown away and then fight pirates to protect it. The jokes practically wrote themselves. But not everyone was laughing. The Thorian Empire, it turned out, had a very different reaction. Kate was 3 days into her stay on Haven's Edge, finally relaxing after the chaos of the past few weeks, when the official message arrived. It came through on the diplomatic channel, which meant it was serious. Really serious. She opened it expecting maybe a fine for some regulation she'd broken. Instead, she found herself staring at the seal of Lord Commander Drex, the highest military authority in the Thorian Empire. The message was formal and cold. Kate Miller and her dragon were hereby challenged to face the gauntlet of flames on Thoria Prime. It was an ancient trial, the message explained, where beast and master proved their bond through tests of combat, endurance and loyalty. The Thorians had held this tradition for over 1,000 years. No off-worlder had ever beaten them on their home ground. The message continued with barely concealed contempt. If Kate refused the challenge, she would be branded a coward across the known galaxy. More importantly, Carthax would be officially declared a dangerous, uncontrolled animal. Subject to immediate executive termination. They'd kill him. Kate read the message 3 times, her hands shaking with anger. She called the only person she could trust to give her straight advice. Tommy Webb ran freight on the route parallel to hers. They'd met years ago on a station repair dock and stayed in touch ever since. He was one of the few people in this business who didn't treat her like an idiot just because she cared about things other than profit. Tommy's face appeared on her comm screen, his expression already worried. He'd obviously heard the news. Kate, please tell me you're not actually considering this, he said before she could even speak. They're threatening to kill Carthax if I don't show up, Kate replied flatly. It's a trap. Tommy ran a hand through his hair, frustrated. The Thorians breed their war beasts from the moment they're born. They train their beast masters from childhood. It's literally their entire culture. You've had Carthax for what, 2 months? 3 months, Kate corrected, glancing back at the cargo bay. Through the open door, she could see Carthax dozing in a patch of sunlight that streamed through the viewport. His scales looked better now, shinier. He'd gained weight. The haunted look in his eyes had started to fade. Almost 3 months. Kate, that's nothing compared to what you're up against. The Thorians spend decades preparing for the gauntlet. Their dragons are perfect specimens trained for this exact purpose. Carthax is. Tommy hesitated, trying to find diplomatic words. Old? Kate offered. Scarred? Missing a wing? Yeah, I know. Everyone keeps reminding me what a worthless dragon he is. I didn't say worthless. I'm just trying to be realistic here. This isn't about pride, Kate. They could kill you both in those trials. Kate stood up and walked to the cargo bay entrance. Carthax's ear twitched at the sound of her footsteps, but he didn't open his eyes. He trusted her enough now to sleep while she was near. That simple fact made her chest tight with emotion. They called him worthless, Tommy, she said quietly. They said a human and a broken dragon don't deserve respect. They're demanding I show up just so they can humiliate us in front of the whole galaxy. Prove that their perfect system is better than what Carthax and I have. Kate. He saved my life, Kate interrupted, her voice harder now. When those raiders came, Carthax could have stayed in the cargo bay. He could have let them take me and hoped they'd leave him alone. But he didn't. He fought for me. A human he'd known for barely 2 months fought 6 armed pirates to protect. She turned back to the comm screen, meeting Tommy's worried eyes directly. So yeah, I'm doing this. Because Carthax deserves someone who'll fight for him the same way he fought for me. Because I'm not going to let some empire tell me my dragon isn't good enough. And because if I back down now, I'm proving them right. That humans are weak. That loyalty doesn't matter. That bonds like ours don't mean anything. Tommy was quiet for a long moment. Then he sighed and Kate saw the hint of a smile. You're completely insane, you know that? Probably, Kate admitted. When do we leave for Thoria Prime? You think I'm letting you walk into this alone? Someone needs to handle the logistics while you're busy proving the entire Thorian Empire wrong. Tommy grinned. Besides, I've got to see this. A freight hauler and a one-winged dragon taking on the best warriors in the galaxy? This is either going to be the most inspiring thing I've ever seen or the most tragic. Either way, I'm not missing it. Kate felt tears prick at her eyes. She blinked them back quickly. Thanks, Tommy. Don't thank me yet. Thank me if we survive this crazy plan of yours. 6 months had passed since Kate won the gauntlet, and Haven's Edge colony looked completely different now. The old freight depot that used to sit there was gone. In its place stood something much bigger, a huge ranch that stretched across the land as far as you could see. Kate had taken every credit she won from that race and bought property. Lots and lots of property. Above the main entrance gate hung a sign that read, Second Chances Ranch. The name said everything about what this place meant. Boss, we've got another transport incoming, Jake shouted from the landing pad. He'd given up his own freight route months ago to work with Kate full-time. Running cargo just didn't seem important anymore compared to this. They're saying they've got 3 Shriek Hawks that nobody wanted to adopt and 1 crystalline serpent with a busted light organ. Kate looked up from her data pad and smiled. That's great news. We've got room in the east enclosure. Tell Doc Rachel to be ready when they touch down. She'll need to check them all before we can settle them in properly. The ranch had grown so much bigger than Kate ever thought possible. Creatures from all across the galaxy ended up here, aliens that other species had given up on. Too old to be useful. Too scarred to be pretty. Too broken to be fixed. Too imperfect to matter to anyone. Except humans mattered about them. Humans with their famous stubborn streak and that weird instinct to form bonds with anything that needed help took these creatures in. Every single one. Other species in the galactic community had a name for what Kate was doing. They called it Miller's Folly. They thought she was crazy. They thought all humans were crazy for copying her idea. But humans? Humans just called it doing the right thing. Inside what used to be a barn but was now a comfortable shelter, Carthax stretched out in the warm afternoon sunlight. He wasn't by himself anymore. 12 other void dragons rested around him in the space. All of them had been rejected by someone. All of them had been labeled worthless at some point. Kate watched them from the doorway and realized something important. Carthax was teaching the others. He was helping them remember who they used to be before captivity and mistreatment broke their spirits. He was giving them back their dignity. She grabbed his lunch. They'd discovered a local protein source that he absolutely loved, and walked over to sit beside him just like she did that very first day on her ship. Back when everything started. You know you kicked off something huge, right? Kate said, settling down next to his massive form. There are 50 other ranches just like this one now. Spread across a dozen different colony worlds. Humans everywhere are going absolutely wild with this whole rescue operation thing. Carthax made that deep rumbling sound in his chest. Kate had learned his different sounds by now. This particular rumble meant something specific. That's what humans do. Yeah, Kate said with a genuine smile spreading across her face. I guess it really is what we do. She leaned back against his warm scales and looked around the barn. Every creature here had a story. Every one of them had been thrown away by someone who should have cared. And every single one of them had found their way to humans who decided that unwanted didn't mean unworthy. Word had spread fast through the galaxy. If you had a creature you couldn't handle, couldn't fix, or just didn't want anymore, you could send them to a human colony. Some human would take them in. Some crazy human would figure out how to help them heal. The other species didn't understand it. They kept asking why humans wasted resources on animals that served no purpose. Why pour time and money and effort into something damaged? But humans knew something those other species hadn't figured out yet. Nothing alive was actually worthless. Everything deserved a chance. And sometimes, the most broken things became the most beautiful when someone finally gave them the love and care they needed. Kate's datapad buzzed with another message. 2 more transports were requesting permission to land. One had a blind star whale calf. The other carried 4 elderly moon cats whose owner had died. "We'll take them all," Kate typed back without hesitation. Because that's what humans did. They didn't turn away creatures in need. They made room. They figured it out. They gave second chances to those the universe had given up on. And sometimes, those second chances turned into something extraordinary.